in English, you have a project. It's called Evaluating Communication Competence. Our objectives are to analyze and evaluate a communication exchange, differentiate between formal and informal language, as well as appropriate and inappropriate responses. When we carefully examine the communication skills of others, it helps us to sharpen our own abilities to be clear and respectful communicators. This activity is designed to allow you to observe and evaluate communication with real settings. You'll observe informal communication within a social setting, such as an interaction between friends or a conversation between family members. You'll also consider whether the communication was appropriate for the situation. Okay, these are the instructions. It says complete the following steps and use your observations to answer the questions in the space provided. Okay, the first thing it says is observe an interaction between your friends or family members. Describe the setting and purpose of the interaction. Does it take place over dinner, at the mall, in the hallways at school, in the cafeteria? Okay, so the first thing you have to do is you have to observe an interaction, say where it's taking place. Okay, number 2. Next, describe the speakers. What is their relationships to one another? I mean, are they friends, classmates, husband and wife, siblings? So the second thing you're going to say is you're going to say how the speakers are connected to each other or related to each other. Number 3, pay attention to what is being said. What is the style of speech used? Is it formal or informal? Provide a few examples. Okay, so on number 3, you're going to tell me what style of speech is it? Is it formal speech or informal speech? And you're going to give me examples. If you say formal, then you're going to put an example of some formal words that they said. Okay? If it's informal, then you're going to write a few things that they said that were informal, but you have to give examples. Okay, number 4, consider what you've learned about appropriate and inappropriate responses. Now think about the interaction you just observed. Did the responses seem appropriate to the situation? In other words, were they truthful? Did they bring about a desired outcome? Or were they kind? Provide at least 1 or 2 examples to back up your evaluation. Okay, so number 4, you're going to tell me if you feel like they reacted appropriately. Did they respond appropriately? Now, if it ended up in a fist fight and somebody was sent to the hospital, then it was not an appropriate response, obviously. And the example would be, well, he went to the hospital with a broken nose, okay? All right. Now remember, because we're supposed to be honest, but we're supposed to consider other people's feelings as well. And just because you're honest and you consider other people's feelings, we can't control how they react. But we have to make sure we're using appropriate communication skills, okay? Number 5. Try to identify any feedback signals. These are verbal or nonverbal responses to a message, such as eye contact, nodding, or gesturing. List any feedback signals you observed and explain how each enhanced or hindered the message. Like if you're trying to tell somebody something and they roll their eyes at you, or they cross their arms, and you can tell they're not listening to you. Okay, and that's going to hinder your message. You know that they're not listening to anything you say. But if they're giving you eye contact, they're looking at you and they're shaking their head yes, and they're just explain whatever signals you see, whatever words they say, like, okay, that sounds good, those kind of things. I want you to list the feedback signals. That's number 5. Number 6, given what you know about speech styles in informal settings, would you characterize the communicators as competent in the situation you observed or not? Yes or no, and explain your answers. If you say yes, they were competent, they considered the situation at hand, they considered the people they were talking to, it was appropriate for, this is the desired outcome that I wanted, then you would say yes and you would explain why. Okay? Or you would say no and explain why. You have a couple days to do this. Don't try to cram it all down in 10 minutes. In fact, I would even recommend that you get a tape recorder. I recommend that you record the conversations. That way you can go back and you can listen to it again and again as you answer these questions. Okay? It says to type it on your computer. I don't want this typed. I want this on paper. I want it neat. I want your holes on the left. I want your heading on the top. And if you need to know the heading, I'll tell you the heading. Remember, don't write in the margins. Make your paper neat. I don't care if you print it or if you write it in cursive. Whichever one you do neatly. Okay? Alright.